Thanks again, Rex. Appreciate it. All right, check, check, check. Everybody hear me okay? All right, Mr. Cameraman, you're going to have to move around, okay? Because I'm a teacher, and I can't stand being in one spot. Even when I'm doing what I'm doing, I'm out and about. So, hey, it's...
water here. I didn't hear. Oh, yeah. I'm going to model that. Okay, if I could get everybody's attention. From our previous announcers, I'm going ahead and put my cell phone on silent right now. So if you know anybody that's not doing that, call them right now and remind them. But I'm up here to introduce Sally Marquez. If you don't know, you should know. You better know. She's the director of the NMAA and has been associated with the NMAA since 2004. Has had 14 years of teaching in Texas, New Mexico, Virginia. Her and her staff are the source that you need to go to for information. And in the game that we're playing, you got to know the rules, and there's a lot of what-if scenarios. And it's been my experience with the staffs and people I've been involved with. If you will get involved and ask those questions, you're going to get the best information directly from our association and the NMAA and the people that are running that organization. So we develop a relationship with them and get involved. But without further ado, if you'll please welcome Sally Marquez.
Thank you very much. Sorry about my voice, it's a little hoarse, and if I start coughing, I'm going to be drinking water, so forgive me for that. Like he said, I've been with the NMA since 2004, and I was looking back and that's how many years. This is going to be my 34th year in education. And it's like some of you, you're right there as well. But every year it's exciting. There's not a year that I don't look forward to July and August to get started. And I was talking to somebody the other day, and it's just kind of like a circle. But every time you get to that starting point of the circle, it's exciting again. So in this presentation, some of you have heard some of this stuff, but it's an open dialogue. So feel free to ask questions. Don't just let me sit up here and talk for an hour and 20 minutes. Feel free to ask questions and let's interact, because before you leave here, I want to make sure you have an understanding of the rules, especially that coaches need to be aware of. In the office, Scott Owen helps me with the bylaws. Alyssa Westbrook does as well. So those are the two people and myself that if you have any questions regarding a bylaw, eligibility, to make sure you call us. And as he said, that's one thing with my staff. I've told them we're there 24/7 for you. Hey, I don't have a secretary. You guys can call me directly on my cell phone, my landline, email me. I'll get right back to you. So make sure you utilize that. In the bylaws, Section 6 and Section 7 are probably the bylaws that you need to make sure you understand and you know. I know it's boring reading for some of you, but if you're just sitting there and you don't have anything to do, pick it up and read and see if you can understand some of these bylaws and regulations. But of course, again, if you don't understand it, a lot of calls like, it's simpler to call you because you'll get it off your head versus me trying to figure it out, which is true. So if you ever have questions, make sure you call us. Out of season coaching. This is the one that you need to make sure you're aware of. In the summer, which we are right now, until the first day of school, we do not regulate anything in the summer. The only thing we regulate is if something happens after the summer, and I'll go through that in slides, such as you cut somebody because they were not involved in the summer, or you were coaching somebody in the summer and they were not your athletes, and then all of a sudden they came and transferred to your school. We'll go through those. Those are the only two things we regulate in the summer. Other than that, it's open. You can practice as much as you want. You can coach as much as you want. Yes? The dates of summer is your last day of school to the first day of school. Now, for those of you who go beyond Memorial Weekend, we have said Memorial Weekend, if you're in school or not, you can go ahead and start coaching. So first day to last day. Any other questions? Okay, without a season coaching, you have 7.5 hours a week. That's a lot of time in the off season. But the 7.5 hours do include athletic class. So if you have an athletic class, let's say you have an hour athletic class every single day, that's 5 hours. You still have 2.5 hours Monday through Friday for out-of-season coaching. So you still have some time to work with them. And it used to be a rule you only had an hour a day, after school. That's not the rule. You can put the 2.5 hours however you want. If you do not have an athletic class, you have 7.5 hours that you can work with them after school. And if you're on block scheduling, which some of you are, you're usually utilizing 4.5 hours during the week, you have 3 hours after school that you can work with them. Now, open gym. There's no such thing as open gym anymore, open weight room. If you get open gym, that's part of your 7.5 hours. So go ahead and coach, because it's part of it anyway. Okay? If you want to open the gym, you're going to have to count that as part of your 7.5 hours. For most of the basketball coaches, we always in gym. Now, that is inclusive of the whole entire program. So you cannot have JV has 7.5 hours, varsity has 7.5 hours. You cannot do that. It's all inclusive. So make sure that if you have your JVs in there and your varsities in there, make sure they're going at the same time, because that is within the 7.5 hours. If you have the JV go an hour after school and then the varsity go an hour after school, that's counted as 2 hours. It's not counted as 1 hour and 1 hour. So make sure you're looking at that. The rule also is utilize your 8th graders in out-of-season coaching with the high school kids. However, at the middle school level, there's not out-of-season coaching. So if you have those 8th graders getting them ready for high school, they need to be doing the out-of-season coaching with the high school. Any questions? Volunteer coaches, assistant coaches, head coaches, it's all the same. So your volunteer coach can't have an hour and your assistant coach can't have an hour. It's all inclusive. Yes, sir. No, we just passed a rule last year, no season for 7th graders. There's no out of season in the middle school level. It's all high school. Let them play every single sport at that level. If they're in a class, when the bell rings at the end of the school day, they're done. So don't extend the class after school, because that's against the bylaws. Okay? Yes? Cheer and dance is year-round, so there's no regulations. Yes, sir.
If the coach teaches at college, can that be considered as part of the workout if his students are participating in that class?
Give me an example.
Okay, I teach a weight conditioning class at North Metro College. Some of my players enter that class.
That is considered part of your 7.5 hours. So if you have those kids in your class, that would count against your 7.5 hours. So it'd be wise not to have them in your college class. Any other questions? Yes? That's if you're the teacher on record. Now, in some classes, if you have athletic class and your basketball coach is not in the athletic class and your basketball athletes are in that class, it still counts. Okay, so you have some coaches that are not certified for PE, so they're not the teacher on record in the book, but it would count towards athletic class, towards the 7.5 hours.
Strength classes, strength and conditioning, are those, because we have athletes and we have non-athletes.
If the class is open to the general population, okay, the general student body, you have it in your book and it says weight training, and anybody can get in the class, then it's not considered athletic. But once your registrar starts picking and choosing and you have it open to the general population, and then all of a sudden all the athletes happen to be in this 1/4 period class, okay, that's going to count. Okay, that's kind of gaming the system and trying to go through the gray area. So be careful with that, because we have sanctioned some schools because they're doing that. So make sure if it is open to the general population, it is the general population. Hey, undue influence. These are, there's a list in the bylaws in section 7, and it's actually in section 1, and I think it's in section 6. Read them all. I've kind of put the main ones in here that might be the ones that you need to make sure you're looking at. First and foremost, foreign exchange students. Coaches, you cannot have a foreign exchange student that then is one of your athletes. Away from sponsoring those foreign exchange students. They can be with teachers, but they cannot be with you as a coach. Okay, so that's first and foremost. The other one, communication. If you have a parent call you and they're interested in transferring to your school or coming to your school and they are not in your district, the first thing you need to say is, I cannot communicate with you, send them to the athletic director. Do not engage in conversations with parents that want to come and be a part of your program that are not in your bona fide residence. Send them to the athletic director. And I can't express that enough, that that's really what you need to make sure you get done. The ADs know. We tell the ADs that to tell the coaches to send them to them. So don't engage in those conversations. You're in a grocery store and a parent comes up to you and they're at a district next to you and hey, I like your program, I have this son, and of course their son is going to be an All-American and a D1 player. That's because all of them are in New Mexico. But don't engage in those conversations whatsoever. You know, nowadays, and you guys know this, parents get their little pat on the back when they think their kids at 8th grade and 7th grade are being recruited by the high school coach. Then they go and talk at work. Hey, my kid, so-and-so wants my kid. I mean, it's just they're getting their little pat on the back is what it's all about. And then they start causing problems that way. Yes?
So can you explain like the rules for our coaches coaching like the AAU team, like that? Are our coaches allowed to coach certain teams? How does that work?
My next slide? Yeah, right, my next slide, and I'll get to that. One more thing here, though. Transportation, make sure you're not transporting kids. Hey, when I say transporting, okay, be logical. A kid is there, it's 9 o'clock at night, and mom and dad can't pick them. Okay, what are you going to do? As human beings, we take them home. We make sure they're safe. Okay, that's logical. When I'm saying transporting kids, let's give an example. Espanola. I don't know why I chose Espanola, because I just saw somebody in Espanola. Sorry. New AD here. Whoop, red card. Somebody threw up a red card. Okay, let me use another. No, I'll stick with Espanola. Yeah. So Espanola, let's say the coach lives in Los Alamos, and you have an athlete in Los Alamos. It's easier for the parent to drop that athlete off at the coach's house and have them drive them in Espanola. That is against the bylaws. Do not transport these kids to and from school because they live close to you. Because basically, they need to get to school on their own. It's considered undue influence that the coach is picking them up and taking them to school. So they're there. Yes.
Question. My daughter is an athlete, but I'm coaching her basketball and volleyball. And all of her best friends are on the team as well. And so
Do you live in district or out of district?
in district, and they actually like will sleep at my house. They're her friends. And so
That's okay if they're in district. Most of this is when they're out of district and they're trying to get to the school.
okay, so like I can take them to practice and take them home.
But just make sure if you have a kid that's your daughter's friend and they live out of district and the parents drop them off at your house and then they want you to transport them to school, that's where your violation is going to be.
So long as like they're spending the night or whatever.
Any other questions? Yes? Direct them to the AD. Direct them to the AD. Direct them to the AD. You can answer the questions. Okay, the last question over here was the club affiliation, AAU. There is not a bylaw that a coach cannot coach AAU. Everybody thinks there is. The bylaw is during the school year, and especially this is a lot with basketball or soccer or whatever, during the school year, you cannot work with athletes on weekends. So AAU tournaments are on weekends. So how can you coach AAU? And you're subject to 7.5 hours. So how are you going to coach AAU? So you're still subject to that 7.5 hours Monday through Friday on school days. So really, during the school year, you're not really allowed to coach AAU. You can't coach your kids because you're going to be in violation. So it's easier to say you can't coach AAU, but that's not the truth. You cannot coach your kids in AAU. There are some coaches that are coaching club or AAU that are not coaching their own athletes. That's fine. That is not a violation. You just can't coach your own athletes. Now, what happens though? If you coach other athletes that are not your athletes and they transfer to your school because you were the coach, that's where the violation takes place. So it's not the fact that you go coach AAU, it's the fact now that because of your influence on a kid, the kid now transfers to your school. And in the summer, it's open. You can do whatever. Now, there's some schools that are getting really creative, especially in soccer and basketball, where the boys' coach is coaching the girls and the girls' coach is coaching the boys. That is legal because those are not your athletes. So if you want to cross-gender, if you have that relationship and you want to cross-gender, that's fine also. So, but just make sure you're staying in that 7.5-hour rules. Did that answer your question? Any other questions with club, AAU? Yes?
Sally, what about, on the reservation, we have these native tournaments going on.
When are the tournaments going on? Summer's open. Now, out of season, if they start having those tournaments, and a lot of basketball do, and soccer and all of those, if they start having them in March, because I just kind of crack up, well, I'm an AAU coach, so here I am. Right after the state basketball tournament on the 10th or 12th, there's a tournament on the 19th. You know, they're going right away. You just need to make sure your coaches are not coaching those, but the kids can play in them. It's not a problem. Other questions? Yes.
What happens if the coach has a child that plays for them at the high school level, and can they play for the parent at the AAU level as well, or are you coaching your high school kid in that?
No, you can coach your kid. There's no regulation. However, your kid is usually playing for you or your school, or they're going to play for your school, and all the buddies are at that school. So that's where the violation is. It's not your kid, it's the friends that tag along with your kid. Just because your kid's on the team does not give you an open that I'm going to coach this team. You still have to look at who else is on that team as well. But you can coach your son to your heart's content or your daughter. Yes, sir. Yeah, the only regulation, again, is immediate. Your son and daughter. Grandkids follow the same rule as the other kids. Any other questions? Sorry about that. Again, beginning summer, the 7th grade year, that Memorial Weekend, the 6th graders that finish 6th grade, and then they're going on to 7th grade, they're considered 7th graders. So that's where the out-of-season coaching you be careful with. Now, it starts summer, so you're okay in the summer. But once they begin that 7th grade year, which is the summer prior to 7th grade, that's when you've got to be real careful with. 6th grade and below, you're open. You can coach them. Summer workouts. Okay, like I said, I was up here. I said this is what, my 33rd, 34th year. I don't know what it is. And yes, I was a coach for many, many, many of those years. So I get the summer. I get what you are trying to do in the summer. I understand that that's where you start preparing for the next season. Be careful with what you say to parents. and what you say to kids, because that's when isolation in the summer occurs. So you don't want to tell a kid, if you don't come to open gym, or if you don't come to practice, or if you don't play in this tournament, you're not going to be a part of our program. And a lot of coaches do that. And I know they're trying to use a scare tactic to make sure they go. And I know it's important that all kids go, because that's how you start developing the camaraderie, you know, through the summer and the development of the skills. But you cannot say that, because that is a violation. You have to make sure, coaches, that you are aware, and my son was in this situation, that there's a lot of kids that have divorced parents. And there's a court of law that says they have to go from mom to dad in the summer for 6, 7, 8 weeks, whatever it is. So your kids that you have coaching may have to go. My son had to go to Michigan every single summer and miss a lot. But there was nothing I could do about it. And so you cannot penalize those kids. And because I'm as a parent in that situation, I understand it. I understand where that happens. So just make sure, now when the season comes up, you don't want to cut a kid and say, well, you didn't develop all summer. You were never in the gym all summer. You didn't get better all summer. Well, you could say in reverse and say, you didn't get better from last season to this season. There's a difference there of saying you just are not good enough. But there's a difference of how to say it. Because parents will call me and say, my son cut because he had to work in the summer, or he had to go visit. We had one case, guys, that a kid got cut because his grandmother had cancer, and he chose to go be with his grandma for 3 weeks in the summer before he passed away. And the kid came back and got cut. They had already removed him out of athletic class. That, guys, it's got to stop. Hey, I know athletics is important, but what are we teaching our kids? So make sure you watch what you say. Yes, sir. Cheer. That's my other life. Cheer could be a little bit different. And I will say it may be a little bit different. Usually what happens, the coaches will call me on a case-by-case basis. And the reason cheer is a little bit different is April, most of them. And they go to camps to start working for what they're going to do in football in the summer. However, we still have to follow that if you had that kid try out and they made the team in April and they had to miss something in the summer, you cannot penalize them. So in other words, you cannot have a flyer go to a base because they were not there in the summer. Just be real careful with it on that. You still have to be in the guidelines that there are some situations where kids just cannot be a part of the summer. So, and you don't want to keep a kid in April and then they couldn't do a camp in the summer and cheer, and then you cut them in August. That's when you're going to get in problems. So just make sure that communication is a little bit better in the spirit world for summer.
Can you direct a kid not to show up to open gym? Do you have a really weird situation where a kid showed up for a couple of days of summer and then decided to go swimming one of the days, and then the next day was directed not to show up?
Summer's pretty much open to everybody. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to say no more, because basically you're cutting that kid, and you can't cut until the season starts. So, and a lot of coaches are doing that because you have athletic class and you're dictating who's going in athletic class, and all of a sudden a kid who was in athletic class last year is told that no, you're not going to be in athletic class next year. Basically, you're cutting before they have a tryout period. So watch that communication there a little bit with that. And I know it's tough, because I know you're so excited and you want your athletic classes, you want to get started right away for the season. You still have that tryout period. And when I say tryouts, and I don't even know if there's a slide on tryouts, guys, don't cut the first day. Just don't. I know you want to get started, but you know the season's 4 months long. What's 2 or 3 days of tryout to keep you out of trouble? And when I say keep you out of trouble, we had a softball team one time cut after 1 hour and didn't pick softball. Now, how was I supposed to defend that one? That was a tough one. So, you know, and then in the tryout period, like I just said, don't use the summer to say you didn't play in the summer. My suggestion for you is have some type of rubric. Because if a parent's going to challenge you, you have the documentation. And it's so much easier for the athletic director to defend you. It's just not good, you know. So just make sure you have something in writing on a daily basis during that tryout period, if you do have tryouts. Season, I think I just talked about that. Sports season starts from the first day to the day that you're out of the championships, or you're out of season. You didn't make it to state, or you're out at state. From the first day, tryouts need to begin on the first day. Okay, not any sooner. We get that. Well, can I have tryouts the week before our first day of practice? No, you cannot. Make sure you have that tryout period on the first day during the season. Okay. Scholastic eligibility. I have put a committee together. There's about 10 athletic directors and about 3 of my staff members, and I asked the board of directors to look at our scholastic eligibility bylaws. And the reason I'm asking that is because these bylaws this is a state statute, the 2.0, and I don't know the date when it came in, but I know it's the 80s or 90s when 2.0 came in. It's not the matter of 2.0. I think we need to look at everything. And the reason I'm saying it is when the NCAA goes to 3 and all they do is count core courses, and you know, and then other things are going on with our virtual schools, our online schools. Education, like I said, 33, 34 years, it is totally different than it was way back then. And so I have this committee together so that we need to look at that. We need to say, are we behind the times? Do we need to evaluate our scholastic eligibility? That's going to come down the pipe, whether it's a year or 2 years from now, but it's still 2.0, no more than 1F. The one thing, coaches, you need to make sure you do, and you need to help your athletic directors. You know your kids. They're your athletes. You need to know in and out with your athletes who is taking a course outside of the school. In other words, are they in a college course? Are they on an online course? Are they in credit recovery? You as coaches need to take ownership of that and ask these athletes, and then you need to communicate that with the athletic director. We get in trouble so much, and there's so many forfeits because of an online or a class that's outside of the school day that they're taking on their own, not in your school. The other times that we get in trouble is when you have a charter school or homeschool kid. You need to communicate with those guys. It's your responsibility. It's not the athletic director's 100%. It always falls back on the athletic director. But actually, coaches, you need to help the ADs. 2.0, no more than 1F. Make sure your seniors, coaches, make sure your seniors are in classes over 50% of the day. Most of you have 6 and 7 period days. Seniors need to be in at least 4. Make sure of that, because they cannot be less than that or they're not considered students. I'll get you 2 real quick here. Why am I trying to thought too? And as seniors, you also must pass 51% of the day. So if you're senior, and I'm saying seniors because usually those are the ones that are taking a smaller load because they have all their credits. If a senior only has 4 classes, they have to pass all 4. They do not have that luxury of being able to have an F. You have to pass 4. Now, if they have 5 classes, they can pass 4 and have that 1F. So just make sure you're aware of that. Let me go here first.
I know we had an issue this last year with the W's in the college level. Was that changed in the bylaws to count as an F for the students?
The W's are okay. It's the WF that is considered an F. An incomplete, a WF, or an N, a no grade, considered an F for scholastic eligibility. Now, at the college level, if they have a W, they've withdrawn within the right amount of time, then we don't count that. Correct. It is. Okay, so let me give you an example of this, and this is where we have a hiccup, and I'm going to talk to the athletic directors about this. Does anybody have block scheduling? A few of you. Okay, so I'm speaking to non-block scheduling people. At the end of the first semester, each class is worth half a credit. Okay? Now, when a kid is taking a college class, that college class is worth 1 credit. So you think about it mathematically. Your classes at the school are half credits. This is 1 credit. So logically, this counts 2 classes. So if you're not in block scheduling, so you've got a half credit, half credit, half credit, they take a college class, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so they do have over 50%. Now that goes 1, 2, 3, we get an F, 4, 5, 2 Fs. Because this is actually 2 classes. So be really careful with that, especially when you are not on block scheduling. If you are on block scheduling, the college courses are the same. Okay, you don't have to worry about that. We get in trouble when they're half, 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 and then a full. So full is 2 halves, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They get a B, 1, 2, 3, B, B. Okay, so just make sure you're looking at that.
So in that same sense, so if they've got 3 classes at the high school and the 1 college class, it ends at the Christmas break. Do they re-roll into a new one?
Correct. Good question. Okay, so first semester, high school, high school, high school, college. They're fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one's class is done. Second semester, 1, 2, 3. Do they have enough classes? They don't. They're going to have to enroll in 1 more high school class or another college class because they have to at least have 4 out of the 6 or 7. Great question.
Now, these college classes you talked about, like, let's say we have a student and he's taking 2 classes in high school, 2 classes in college, that's 50%.
Because that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we have a lot of schools that you can make. There's a part in the bylaw that says you can make any of these rules stricter. So we have a lot of schools that do not let them have an F. We have one school, I think, that does their grading period for athletics at semester. So those kids, if they're not eligible at semester, they're done for the whole entire next semester. Okay, so the only thing you cannot do is go reversal, because state statute says you have to at least do athletic eligibility at 6 weeks. So if you have 6-week period, you can do it at 6. If you have 9 weeks period, you can't do it every week. Now you could, if they're eligible, okay, if they're eligible for 9 weeks, and you as a coach check every week, and you have a kid that's not, they're eligible here, so they're eligible for this 9 weeks, but you see they're slipping, then you can pull them, just like you want to pull them, or not. Okay? Yes, sir. Yes, the cumulative provision. Cumulative provision can only happen at semester. It cannot happen at the first 9 weeks. It cannot happen at the third 9 weeks. And as for 6-week grades, it cannot happen at the third 6 weeks or the sixth 6 weeks. I mean the first and second or the fourth and fifth. Okay, so those are just standalone grades. At semester, if a kid is not eligible at semester, then he really messed up, because there's a lot of ways to get eligible at semester. First way, check the marking period grades. So if you're in the grading period, check the marking period grades. If they're eligible at the marking period, they're eligible. You don't need to check anything else. Okay, so you don't have to worry about semester grades. You don't need to worry about that. If they're eligible at the marking period, they're eligible. If they're not eligible at the marking period, then you want to check the semester grades. At semester, they must have a 2.0 and no more than 1 F. If they're not eligible at semester, you can check cumulative as long as you do not have 2 Fs. If you have 2 Fs at the semester, they're done. Okay, so if you don't have 2 Fs at the semester, let's say they have 1 F and they have a 1.8. At that time, you can check cumulative provision. The cumulative grades only go back to 9th grade. You can't add 8th grades in there. Even if they participate as an 8th grader, you cannot add 8th grades in there. Okay, so you're talking cumulative provision, and what that is, if they have above a 2.0 cumulatively, and if they only have 1 F at this current semester, then they can be eligible. You can. For just this last 9 weeks, that May, when the school ended? Yes. Okay, so that's why I'm saying at semester, there's many ways to get eligible. So the end of the school year happened. Your kid has 2 Fs, and they have a 1.8. Okay, let's say that's the scenario. Well, if they were smart, they could take a summer school class and repeat one of those Fs grades. So let's say they failed biology 1 and algebra 1. They went to summer school for algebra. Instead of an F, they have a C. You can replace 1 grade at semester during the summer. 1 grade only, not 2, not 3, 1 only. So this F now becomes a C. Ooh, wrong finger up. Whoops! Didn't mean that one. So this, that was pretty good. Cut. Don't. So this F becomes a C. Oh, here I am here. Okay. This F becomes a C. So you have 1 F. Okay, so you have 1 F left. Now, at that F, you can now, because you only have 1 F at semester, after the summer, you can now do cumulative provision. Makes sense there. So there's a lot of ways to get eligible at semester, especially the spring semester, after the school year for the fall. Now, in December time, you don't have those classes to take, but you could use cumulative.
So I guess the other from was the year that and you had your F there, you weren't eligible, but you had another F as a freshman. Does that happen to the 2 Fs?
No, it's just that one. So at that 1 grading period, the question is, if you had an F as a freshman and an F as a junior, is that the 2 Fs? No, at that grading period, if you only have 1 F, you go back to cumulative. Now, there used to be a rule years and years ago. There used to be a rule that you could only use cumulative on a kid 1 time. There's no longer that rule. And the reason being, if you have to cum a kid more than 1 time, they're probably not going to be eligible cumulatively either. So you can do it as many times.
On the college courses, there's things coming as 2, we have 3 classes there. So if they fail that college course,
They're done.
count as the 2 Fs?
If they're going to take a college course, you better not make sure they're not failing that college course. And that's where we're getting ourselves into trouble.
So you said that you can do the eligibility process 6 weeks, 9 weeks, or semester. What about in the school that goes above and beyond? Can they do it on a week-to-week basis in the administration?
They can do it on a week-to-week basis as long as they're eligible at the marking period. Okay, so in other words, let's say at the first 9 weeks, are you 9 weeks or 6 weeks? Okay, so let's say at the first 9 weeks you checked all your kids' grades and all the kids that were eligible. And then you have kids that were ineligible. Those ineligible kids cannot gain eligibility until the next 9 weeks. They're done. These kids are eligible. If you want to go stricter and say I'm going to check your grades every week, and if you have an F, you're not playing, then you can do that. Because they're already eligible, now you're stricter to make them ineligible until the next marking period. But you cannot get these ineligible kids eligible any sooner than the next marking period. That make sense? Okay. If that's their only F. Because you're usually doing 4, so they've passed 3 out of the 4. Okay, with block. It's a little different.
In some of the special IEPs, it says that students cannot be ineligible because of, I mean, and I know this isn't right, but how do you combat the fact that in their IEP it says that they must maintain a 1.7, and if they are ineligible, they still are eligible.
The only IEPs that we look at for scholastic eligibility are C and D level students. So if they're A and B level students, they follow the exact same guidelines that other students. If they're C and D level students, then the IEP team can have their goals to allow them to play. Usually what you see, you don't see a 1.7. Usually what you see is if Johnny, let's say you have a kid that's maybe a behavioral disordered, and you just want Johnny in school, you know, that he's not ditching or whatever. So the IEP can say something like, Johnny may be in school 90% of the marking period in order to play athletics. And then you would have to follow that. But that has to be a C or D level student, not A or B. Now, with the IEPs, they must be in place prior to the beginning of that marking period you're going to use it for. So in other words, let's say the 9 weeks ends in October and Johnny is struggling. We're not going to go do an IEP team in September and change the playing field. You can do an IEP in September for the second 9 weeks, but not during that middle of that 9 weeks. Yes, sir? All homeschools are eligible, buddy. They're all straight A's. That's all there is to it. Take the parents' grades. That's all you can do. So that's the answer to my question there. The only thing with homeschoolers, make sure they at least show you 4 classes or 4 grades. PE, 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 PE. There's nothing you can do about it. Thus, our Scholastic Eligibility Committee. That's where the struggle is. So what the best thing to do at 9 weeks, you cannot get a 9 weeks class grade. Usually now in college, the kid is able to access their grade at times. Look at, you need to make sure that they're passing all their classes. Kind of think in your head, if there was an F in this college class, or if they were struggling with the D in the college class, would they be eligible? Because 9 weeks are really tough, and that's why we're going to talk today. We're trying to have strategies for athletic directors. There's a lot of schools, though, that have really good rapport with the colleges in their area, and they can get the 9 weeks. If you get it on a piece of paper, the teacher says, yeah, he or she's passing, you know, that type of stuff. Do the best you can is all we really can do. I think there's one more hand up that I didn't get. Yeah, there it is.
So if they have that F from that online virtual class, the 9 weeks, does that count as 2 Fs?
Now, with those classes, we're telling our athletic directors, if it's a semester-long course, I mean, if it's a one thing, yes. We're telling our athletic directors, you have a kid taking an online class. If they were sitting in their seat in a brick or mortar type situation, and they had done no work for 9 weeks, because a lot of these kids take these online classes, they sign up, but Johnny's going to wait till the last 3 weeks of the semester to hurry up and get it done, and doing nothing. At the 9 weeks, if they've sat there and done nothing, give it an F. You know, you need to make sure they're at least 50% of their class weight done on those online classes. And coaches, that's what I'm saying. You need to help the athletic directors. because you know your kids. You need to make sure you know what's going on with those classes, because that's where the forfeitures are coming in, are they're on the classes outside of the school.
So one more question, if you're doing a remediation course and you start really late, or sometimes starts 4 or 5 weeks late on that, so semester really course, and it takes them 3 weeks to finish on the back end, does that mean they're automatically out?
So you didn't start right in August? Be smart. There's got to be a teacher overseeing that remedial class. Is a kid working or is a kid doing nothing? You know, just kind of look at that and see, okay?
Our charter school is at the college, and so they're like, their English is worth 3 credits. So do I count it F 3 times, or if they have an F, they're out?
3 credits in a semester?
Well, they get 3 for the college because they're in college credits. Charter school is through them, so they're gonna get this.
Just a sec, sorry. So not 1 college credit, 3? Or 3 for you?
No, for the charter school is through university.
Mm-hmm.
Is where ours is. So they may have 1 English class, 1 math class, whatever, but it's counting so many credits.
So you're taking 3 different classes, counting 1 credit each on your transcript. We'll have to look at it and see what your registrar does with it on your transcript. Oh, the charter school. And they're only taking 3? What you'll have to do with the charter school, if that's a full load for the charter school, then you have to just let them take 3. See what a full load is for that particular school. Any others?
So if you have a senior that's first semester took all classes, second semester is doing 1%, and let's say they're just doing basketball ends and then they want to withdraw from the class, does that affect their basketball? So they can't do that, right? They have to.
The previous and current semester that they're participating in, they must at least be in 51% of the classes.
But then if they withdraw after the season, then they're not, they weren't eligible.
If they draw after the season, yeah, that's up to your registrar. But after, are you talking basketball mostly? If they withdraw in March, I'm surprised your registrar's letting them withdraw. But season's over. It's kind of like these college athletes that they get eligible in December and they think they're going to go play pro and they don't take any classes second semester. I mean, there's not much you can do about it. It's just the same situation. Okay, we talked a lot about this already. Petition. This is more athletic directors, but for coaches to communicate with your ADs. If you have a kid that's at your practice on the first day of tryouts or first day of practice and you have never seen them before, tell your AD. Don't assume that they're sitting in Portales High School at Portales. Don't assume that. Because in this day and age, with homeschool, with charter school, with non-public private schools, with everything else, you need to make sure you send them to the athletic director first and foremost. Also, 9th graders. If you do not know a 9th grader, you may want to ask every single 9th grader, have you participated at the 8th grade level somewhere in high school? Send them to your athletic director. Don't assume that every single 9th grader has been in your district or is just making their first open enrollment choice. So make sure of that. There's so many things out there that's going on. So there's some athletic directors, and I think they do a great job. I think Larry's one of them in Cleveland, that they have forms that every athlete has to fill out. Where'd you come from? Did you move here? Where'd you play? What'd you play? You know, all of this. It's like a quiz. But you're going to need to know that. So I remember when in coaching, I show up and I just started throwing the ball. Let's go, do layups. You know, that's the type of thing I was. And a lot of you coaches are like that. Okay? But make sure you know who's there and what's going on. Okay? Eighth grade, you have an eighth graders playing up at the high school level. Again, send them to your athletic director. There is an online form that they need to make sure they fill out to get eligible. That online form should be done right before the first time they play. But make sure you're doing that, because if they play and have not put an online form, they are not eligible. So you are playing an ineligible player there. Yes, sir. As long as your school district allows eighth graders. I wouldn't, but I mean, that's me, because they're not in a high school. So you're really dealing with an elementary type administration there. But if if you allow eighth graders to play up, then they're eighth graders. Oh, new rule. Sorry, this is a big one. Right here. Eighth graders can only participate at the high school level in the attendance zone in which they reside unless they're at that institution. So what am I saying? This affects more the bigger schools than the smaller schools. So let's go with Texaco. Do you have a separate, does anybody, where are you? I saw Todd. No? Todd retired, that's right. Okay, Portales, let's go, Mark. Do you guys have a separate middle school building? Okay, so Portales has a separate middle school building. If a kid is an eighth grader at the middle school in Portales, if he lives in Portales, he's eligible at the high school level. If that kid at Portales Middle School lives in Dora, that kid is not eligible at Portales High School. That kid is only eligible at Dora. Now, in our smaller schools, let's say Fort Sumner, the eighth graders are in the building at Fort Sumner High School. Those eighth graders are eligible at Fort Sumner whether they live in Fort Sumner or not, because they're in the institution, if they're in the same building. If you are separate buildings or separate institutions, then they would not be eligible. So that's going to affect more bigger schools, more of the 4, 5, and 6As than our smaller schools. Now, private schools in this scenario, if it's all together, let's say like Academy, an eighth grader at Academy would be eligible for high school at Academy because they're in the same building, in the same institution. Every school has boundaries, okay? So just because you have an agreement, if you have an agreement with another school that your bus will go in and take these kids, or the bus will come in and take these kids, the center can choose whatever school they want to go to. That's for school. That's not for athletic eligibility. Every address has a school district. Goes to Alyssa. And it's online, and what happens is you fill it in online, you sign that ugly signature with your mouse, that you can't read, and the parent signs it, right to Alyssa, and Alyssa will generate a letter back to you. If those forms are not filled out, they're not eligible. It's like having an ineligible player. All eighth graders need, so that they should have had a form. And if they didn't, then yeah, we could probably, it's a problem. All eighth graders need to have that form on file. No, high school. They have to have the form. Eighth graders have. Are you talking about eighth graders? No. Mm-mm. They cannot play at the high school level unless they live in your district. What's going on, guys, and why people are going, well, why we have this rule? Guys, you guys, and I'm saying you guys, coaches, recruiting is going on at 6th grade. We're already trying at 6th grade to say, and I'm going to give you an example. Let's say PV and Farmington, and we've got middle schools. So a middle school, and I'm not saying they're doing it, it's just a really good example. They have a middle school here and a middle school here. I think they have 4. 2 feet into PV and 2 feet into Farmington, automatically. So what's going on? Our parents are trying to make an open enrollment choice or to get their kid here, even though they live in Farmington, so they feed automatically in PV, but they're actually Farmington kids. So right now at 6th and 7th grade level, because our 8th graders playing up, our coaches understand this and are getting kids manipulated into the middle school already at 6th grade. It's getting ridiculous. And so we've got to stop it. We're recruiting at 11 and 12 years old now. That's, if you think about that, that's insane. But that's what's going on. So this rule is, if you want a 13-year-old to play at the high school level, which I think is insane anyway, but if you want a 13-year-old to be with your 17-year-olds, then let them be with the 17-year-olds in their home attendance zone school. And that's the nature of this rule. And that's why, because it's getting out of hand. And I'm just going on my soapbox, because you're talking 13 and 14-year-olds in a bus with 17 and 18-year-olds and hanging out with these kids, because a coach is cutting the sophomore and junior because they see a really good 8th grade athlete coming up. And so what's going on, our sophomores and juniors are not coming out for sports because they see the 8th graders. There's no chance for them to play because this 8th grader is going to take their spot. And a coach sees that. And so we've got to go back to what are we all about? And that's participation. And if we can keep freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors playing before that good athlete, 8th grade, comes up, then that's going to help what we're all about. And so I'm just on my soapbox, I'll shut up. But that's what's going on. So thus, that's why the rule is in place. Yes?
So our situation is we don't have those 8th graders playing, and we don't have the ABs that a bunch of girls sitting on the bench. But this 8th grader does not live in our attendance zone. Her mom teaches in our school, so she's gone to school there together, so she still cannot play.
Unless you're in the same institution. If they're separate buildings, they're not. So even that teacher's kid. Because on another example is we have principals hiring parents because of their kids. Just true stories. True stories. So my job, like I said, here I am on a soapbox. Guys, my job is to make sure, this is what I'm, to make sure we have a level playing field. Make sure it's fair for all. And so that's why these rules are in place, so everybody, it's fair for all. So when we're on the court, we're in the field, whatever, it's fair for all. And that's what this is all about.
So I know with charter schools, if they don't have their, if they don't have the sports, they don't have the sports school, they can play at the zone high school. Is that also for private schools now, or is that, and they, if they don't offer, like, if they have, if they're not offering a certain sport at the private school, does that,
Okay, good questions here. I'll go back to the other slide, but let's go to this one because this kind of feeds into what we're at. Homeschoolers. Homeschool is state law. They can only participate in their home attendance zone school. You cannot deny a homeschooler to participate. However, they're on the same field as your other kids. So in other words, if you have tryouts and they get cut, but you have to let them try out. Okay, so you treat them just the same. You treat them just like if they're in your school. And like we chuckled about, they're always going to be eligible. So just take the homeschoolers and treat them like you will be. Member charter school. We have a lot of charter schools that are members. McCurdy, East Mountain, Cottonwood Classical. I mean, I can name a bunch. We have a lot of charters. Those are member charter schools. If their school does not have a sport, are eligible to participate in their home attendance zone school. Okay. Then we have non-member charter schools. I don't know what the number is. I was shocked that PED has 100, I don't know how many charter schools that we have in our state. And many of them are not members of our association. Those kids, by state law, at the 9th grade level, not the 8th grade level, at the 9th grade level, can have an open enrollment choice as to where they want to play sports at. But once they make that open enrollment choice at the 9th grade level, that's it. They're either going to be charter, they're probably charter schools. Correct, because he's a non-member charter school. Okay? Then we have the new rule. The reason for this, we have non-member private school. You are going to see this more at the middle school level than any other. Most of our private schools are members of our association, but a non-member private school are those itty-bitty ones in a community. They can participate at their home attendance zone school, just like homeschoolers. So I know there's a small private school in Hobbs. They're eligible at Hobbs High School. They're eligible at their home attendance zone school. However, if a kid from JAL is going to this non-member private school, they're eligible at JAL. They're only in the home attendance zone. Just because a school's located in Hobbs does not mean all of them play at Hobbs. They play at their home attendance zone school. Okay, so those are the 4 we have. Some of them are state law, some of them are NMAA. But most of them are state statute. Yes.
Yeah, to go back to that 8th grade attendance zone deal. So when you guys fill out the forms, is the form asking those questions of where they live and what their attendance? So that's where you're kind of capturing that information at that point.
Correct. Okay. Yeah, make sure on those 8th graders that you ask them, do you live in our attendance zone? That's another one.
So if you have a non-member charter school in your district, and those kids are coming from out of district,
At the 9th grade level, they have a choice.
so at the 9th grade level, they can choose to play. So they can go play in town, they don't count.
Correct.
Then if they're 10th or 11th graders, they decide they're gonna come to a sport and sit around, I have to check eligibility of them.
Yeah, if they did not play sports as a 9th grader, they're only eligible at their home attendance zone school. The only time they get that open enrollment choice is as 9th grade. Yes.
So like in Piazza, we don't have football. Can one of my kids go to like Taos to play football?
No. Mm-mm. No, no. The kids are only eligible in the sports that you play. If they're at your school, that's the sports they play. They can't go somewhere else. No, they don't at this point. We've talked about with classification alignment, right? We talked about that over and over as to how do you calculate those, and we just didn't see. Right now, there's not a bunch going to one school that's going to change the classification alignment. So at this time, we do not count them. The question with classification alignment, and Lou, that's another story. So I don't have another hour with classification alignment. But the question with classification alignment that we did take to the board a couple years ago just to get their thoughts. With this day and age with 8th graders, do you start counting 8th graders? For those schools that are allowing 8th grade participation, should the 8th graders be counted in those schools, 8th through 12th grade? Because we have a lot of schools that do not allow 8th grade participation. And so let's give an example. Let's give an example of Rio Grande High School. Rio Grande High School, they do not allow 8th graders. They're usually on the low end of a classification. But Los Lunas High School allows 8th graders. So Rio Grande's in this class, Los Lunas is in this class. So is that Los Lunas gets all those 8th graders that don't count. But if you count the 8th graders, Rio Grande doesn't have any and Los Lunas does, you're really flip-flopping the enrollment here. So you kind of have to look at that, you know, type thing, but that didn't pass. But it's just thoughts that the Classification Alignment Committee were really looking at to see what's fair. Where's that level playing field? So we'll continue to start looking at things like that, but that's this type of stuff that you have to look at within classification alignment. Let's go back to did not participate. This rule is used more than any other rule in the bylaws. If a student did not participate in that sport at the previous school, they would be eligible. Did not participate trumps bona fide residence, trumps who they're living with, trumps everything. This rule does. However, one thing coaches have to understand, and we try to explain this to athletic directors, that this is for kids that were actually eligible to participate the previous year. So in other words, you have a transfer that was a junior. In order to use this rule, you would have to look at their sophomore year. Sorry. Were they eligible at the sophomore year to play? Or did they just choose not to play? If they chose not to play and they were eligible, then they would be eligible as a junior transferring. If they were not academically eligible and they want to use did not participate at the new school, they could not. They have to be eligible at the previous school in order to participate. Okay. Questions? Yeah, all students. Usually we get this. Then they wouldn't be eligible here.
What about if they, I know there's if somebody gets cut, they can't go to another school that same year. If they were trying to participate and got cut from the program the year before at the other school and then transfer, how does that work?
If it was a year prior, they would be under did not participate. They would be under did not participate.
Okay, they technically were out of the team.
Correct.
So that 5-day rule and all that's gone now, where if there was a 5-day tryout, it would.
For the year, right? It would. Yeah. Usually, if they went more than 5 days, forever, the athletic director will check that they did participate, or they'll write it down. So, now he did bring up a good one, and I don't even have the slide on it. I don't remember, but if a kid gets cut from your program, they cannot, we just passed a bylaw, they cannot go to another school and play. So even if it's 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, whatever, they get cut, they are not eligible at any level at another school that season. What was going on is coaches would have trials for 4 days and they were within that 5-day rule. They got cut, they would jump to a school, the next door school, and try to play. So that's no longer, if they get cut, they're done. For the season, they can't go to another school. Yes? At any level. Transfer, the only thing would be, this would be for transfer students, and transfer students cannot play, senior transfer students cannot play anything but varsity. So if you had a kid transfer as a senior, did not participate here, and they were not good enough to make your varsity, they cannot play JV. Seniors transfers. And that usually doesn't happen. Very rare. Did I lose you? You look puzzled? Yeah, I got you. Okay. Concussion law. State law. Not NMAA, state law. The state law is 240 days out, 10 days. So if a student has symptoms of a concussion, not diagnosis, symptoms of a concussion, they are out for 10 days. Even if they have a doctor's note to come back, state law says 10 days. Even if it's your star athlete, coaches. Even if you have the biggest game of your life 3 days later, don't ignore symptoms. It's not worth it. You might think it is worth it because it's in the moment, but you've got to think about the future of these kids. It's not worth it. So 10 days. At the 10 days, they need to get a release from a doctor that they're okay to start activity. So even if you have a release at 5 days, you have the release in hand, you still have to wait another 5 days before you allow them to participate. So 10 days. Now, that is in the summer, because it's state law. It does not dictate. You are responsible. It does not dictate when. It's in practice, off-season, wherever. You got to keep them out 10 days. Now, every year something has been added. This law is so important that the legislators every year are changing it. And so what they just changed this year is that every student athlete must take concussion for students on the NFHS Learn website. Each student will get a certificate, and the certificate must be with you prior to them doing anything. My suggestion, coaches, athletic directors, I'll suggest to the athletic directors that this certificate comes in with the physical. Be a lot easier if you have the physical and the certificate before you let them participate, because they can access this at home. If they don't have a computer, if they're maybe on the reservation not getting the internet or whatever, they can do it on the library. Or before practice, you guys have those, a lot of you have physicals that you have doctors come into your schools, have them go into a computer lab and do this. But it is a certificate. We have asked over and over if we could have a DVD, because maybe a coach would want to do it in and the whole entire team watch it. They're not doing that because of liability purposes. You cannot control who's watching the DVD. And so if somebody gets hurt, it will not stand up in a court of law. But in a court of law, if you have the kid take a concussion course and you have the certificate, then you are liability, you will be covered. So that's why we cannot do it in a group setting. Okay. We tried. We thought it would be easier. We did, but that was their reasoning from the national office, because they can't control it.
So football coaches, what are they doing if they start practice on Monday and we didn't know this? They can't practice those kids Monday, right?
Well, they can. They can. I would suggest not. I would suggest they get on them this week to get it done. But if they haven't, it's up to you as an AD to make that determination.
They're not going to see their kids till Monday. Most of the football coaches gave their kids a week off. They're going to go back in Monday to get ready for 2 days. How do we get those? I mean, I can get those athletes in the computer lab and stuff, but that's like very.
It's up to you and your school. I'm not. It's up. This is state law. So as an NMAA, I'm not saying they can't start practice on Monday. What I'm just telling you that you're going to some way. I would do it within the week. Instead of having 2 days, one day I would get them in a computer lab in between. If you're having 2 days in between, have pizza and get them in a computer lab. But this is state law, so make sure. Certificate is new. This is a new state statute. It was in this legislative session, and she signed it in. She signed it in May. This is new. So, however you want to do it, this is brand new. It's that they have to have this class. This is for all grades because it's state law. However you do it, honestly, I think it'd be easier to tape it to your physical form because you have it there, that they've taken it. The reason for this class to the legislators, guys, this passed really easily. There was both parties passed this 100%. The reason for this is the legislator that added this to the law is a teacher, and he's in the classroom. And the buddies would come up and say, I know Johnny has a concussion, or nobody's told us what a concussion is, type thing. And so it's basically because the kids are around each other, So it's the kids being able to understand what a symptom of concussion, because sometimes these symptoms don't come up right away when a coach is present. They may come up later that night. So this is the reasoning. Mid-school as well. Pardon? It's online, so what you need to, yeah, it's online. It's on our website. Can you, the best way to do, can you email me and I will send it to you? Okay, Sally at NMACT, and then I'll just send you the link.
Does this do away with the one form that we had to have them sign?
No, it's on top of that. So that one form that we have online, parents have signed, that still has to happen. So this is an addition to it. Is that a hand? No. Any other questions? Yes. Yes. Now, if they do it for a fall sport, they don't have to do it for the spring sport, but they're going to have to do it every year. Any other questions? Yes. One time for the year. I said this is state law. This is not generated by our office. So to answer that question, I would just say do it as soon as possible. Just liability purposes for you guys. Just do it as soon. But we don't monitor it. You guys monitor it because it is state law. But I'm sure parents will call us if they didn't do it or something will happen. He said, how long is the course? It takes about 20, 25 minutes. It is free. Any others? Is that the right time? Like I am way over time? Got 2 minutes? Okay. I have 2 minutes. So let me go real quick here. Licensed personnel, make sure everybody's licensed. The misnomer is we don't license you. Okay? The public education department licenses you. Also, private schools, you need to be licensed as well. So with the license, just make sure that you are licensed. Level 1, Level 2, Level 3. Last year, what was new, when changing levels on your license, you had to take the first aid safety course. Well, in the middle of the year, I found out with the coaching license, the public education department does not renew licenses for coaching. They move them up a level automatically. So you could put on your form, I'm renewing my coaching license, like you're level 1 and I'm just renewing it, but they will automatically move you to a level 2. Well, upon automatically moving you to a level, you have to take the first aid safety course. So if any coach is brand new or they're sending something into the PED to get their license renewed for coaching, they need that certificate that says they took the first aid safety course on NFHS Learn. The first aid card, the Red Cross card, I'm CPR, that does not work. You have to take this course. The course is free. No, it's not. It's $45. Whoop! That's like my finger, I messed up there. $45. But you have to take that course. The public education department, reason being, sending in Red Cross cards and all of these that I'm first aid certified, they don't know what the curriculum of those courses are. And they can't decipher, you know, is he first aid certified, is he not, whatever. So that's why they streamlined it to this one course. And make sure volunteer, assistant coaches, head coaches are all licensed, because you cannot have these anybody working with your kids unless they're licensed. Licensed personnel only with the kids. Okay? That, again, that's a liability issue. And above all, guys, I had about 5 or 6 slides. I kind of got on my soapbox a little bit there. But it all comes from you. You know, we have a DVD, our preseason DVD this year that we're going to give to the ADs today that the kids will watch. It focuses on parents and parents' role models and parents acting right. And we have, it's kind of interesting, we actually interviewed some kids, and there was one kid on the DVD, and you'll see it when but there's one kid that basically talked about how embarrassed she was of her dad, screaming and yelling to a point where she said, no, I don't want you to come to my games anymore. And we have quotes and we have kids interviewed as to how the parents and their behavior is affecting them. And it's a really good because it comes from the kids. And so we're really focusing on parents. But we also, guys, sometimes have a coaching problem too, because the parents are acting as the coach acts. So when the coach is screaming and yelling at an official, what's going to happen? The parents are going to start screaming and yelling at officials. So all I ask, you guys do such a great job, and you're in it for the right reason. You're in it for kids. Don't forget, we're education-based athletics. I was just yesterday, Dusty and I met with USA Football, and we went to dinner and had a really good meeting. And they asked us about football. And I said, the good thing about New Mexico is a lot of our parents are understanding, and that high school is the epitome of it. Most of our kids, 99% of them will not go on and play in college. You have to understand that. So how you affect kids at the high school level is what they're going to take for the rest of their lives. So don't forget that when you're on the sidelines. You guys do a terrific job. But remember what it's all about. We've got to teach them morals and character more than anything else. And so I just ask and thank you guys for remembering that in practice, on the field, on the court, wherever, with spirit. There you go. Can't forget our spirit, people. With spirit. I just ask that you remember that. Let's teach kids about life. We do. And also, again, above all, I said at the beginning, I do not have a secretary. I'm available to you, for you, 24/7. So don't hesitate to call if you need anything. So thank you guys very much.